You know we're hosting a family gathering next week, right?
What do you mean by...
That means you need to clean this house spick and span. If I spot even a speck of dust, you're in trouble.
Here we go again. It's like I'm just the hired help to my mother-in-law, Sally. From the moment I got hitched, it's been a relentless wave of her griping. And the worst part? Sally is sneakily brilliant at chipping away at my sanity, all under the radar of my husband and father-in-law. Before I knew it, I turned into something like her personal lackey. Despite the toll it was taking on me, both physically and emotionally, I stuck it out for the sake of my dear husband. But everyone has their breaking point. Should I walk out on my husband to escape her, or endure and carry on like this? Neither option sat well with me. I didn't want to lose what mattered most. So, I pulled together some backup from around me and started plotting a grand scheme to give Sally a taste of her own medicine. My name's Heather, and I'm 29 years old. Almost 2 years ago, I married my husband Ken, and since then, I've been living at his folks' place being a homemaker. I first met Ken 3 years back, and after a year of going steady, we tied the knot. At the start of our marriage, I had a job and we were living in an apartment about halfway between our workplaces. But not long after we said I do, I started clashing with my coworkers. There were a lot of older women at my job. Most of them were older than me. It seemed like they held a grudge because I had walked down the aisle before they did. It wasn't long before they started making my life miserable, and I began to feel the strain, both mentally and physically. I hit my breaking point and spilled the beans to my husband. When I mentioned that I wanted to quit my job, he came up with a suggestion.
So Heather, Mom's actually been asking if we'd consider moving in with her.
What? Your folks' place?
Yeah, it sounds like she's having some health issues lately, and Dad's not getting any younger. They'd feel more at ease with someone younger around.
Oh, I see. That makes sense. Your family does live in an area with quite a few older people.
Yeah, that's true. I've been pretty worried about them, to tell you the truth,
he said with a troubled smile. He was probably concerned about his aging parents. I heard they had him pretty late in life, so they must be pushing 70 by now. His worries about them made sense. Plus, being an only child, he must have been their pride and joy. He's the kind of guy who regularly checks in with his mom just to see how she's doing. So they asked him if we'd consider living with them. If I were in his shoes, I'd probably want to move in with them too.
So I was thinking, if you're cool with it, what if you quit your job and we move in with my parents?
Wait, I can really quit my job?
Absolutely. Honestly, we can live just fine on my income. And if we're at my folks' place, we won't have to worry about rent. We just chip in for living expenses.
Are you sure? Are you really okay with me being the only one getting this much help?
I can't stand seeing you suffer. If there's a way to make things easier for you, I want to take it.
Oh, Ken. Yeah, thank you. And just like that, we made up our minds to move in with the in-laws. I decided that was the perfect time to quit my job. But back then, I had no clue. Just because the job stress is gone doesn't necessarily mean happiness is around the corner. Fast forward a month, and we're having the movers cart all our stuff over to the in-laws. They welcomed us with open arms.
Long time no see. Heather, we're very happy you're here.
No kidding. When we heard you two were moving in, we were over the moon. They were all smiles as they ushered us into the house. As we ambled towards the living room, my mother-in-law, Sally, hollered from the kitchen.
Heather, lend me a hand, will you?
Absolutely. I'm on my way.
Sorry, I can barely keep up with all this.
No problem. I'm here to help. I sprang up and headed to the kitchen. While brewing some coffee, I got the rundown of where everything was. Just when I was about to ferry the mugs over, she held me back.
Hold your horses.
I gave her a puzzled look, not quite getting what was up. She grabbed a mug and started sipping the coffee right then and there. Sally? She took a sip, scrunched up her face, sighed, and pressed her lips together.
This coffee is a disaster.
Can't you even make a decent cup of coffee?
Well,
You're as plain as a post and you can't even brew coffee. You're a real letdown as a daughter-in-law. And I hear you quit your job?
about my job, the office politics were getting to me.
You threw in the towel over something so petty. I swear, you kids these days, you're just so fickle, aren't you?
My workplace was pure torture. But Sally, who didn't have a clue, was laying into me based on her own assumptions. But what could I do? It was my first day there. I couldn't just snap back. All I could do was bite my lip and bear it. She heaved another sigh, tipped the contents of her coffee mug into the sink, and said,
Forget it. I'll redo it. You just grab those cakes over there. And just so we're clear, hands off. You're the dud daughter-in-law, remember?
I did as I was told. From then on, Sally was all sweetness and light whenever Ken or my father-in-law were around. The sniping started from day one of our cohabitation. Since I was jobless, I was stuck at home during the day. Basically, I was under house arrest, only allowed out for groceries.
Clean up properly. Look, there's hair all over. Who taught you to hang laundry like that? Do it right. Your food tastes like cardboard. I can't believe you're serving my son this slop.
Day by day, her acid remarks were chipping away at me. One evening, I thought about bringing it up with my husband. Before turning in, I broached the subject. Ken, listen. When I said his name, he beamed at me. Heather, I can't thank you enough. You've been keeping my mom company during the day, right? What? My mom looked really happy today when you were in the bath. She said it's like having a daughter around. She said that? Yeah, totally. You know my dad is always out hitting the links, right? She was home alone all day, so having you here is a load off her mind. He gave my hand a gentle squeeze and smiled, saying, I mean it. Thank you. The moment I saw his face, I was at a loss for words. What should I do now? I had just about mustered the courage to talk to him about Sally when he caught me off guard with his words. The last thing I wanted was to stir the pot in my husband's family because of me. Given the situation, I felt I had no choice but to suck it up. When I met his gaze with a strained smile, he looked back at me, worry etched all over his face. Oh, my bad. You were about to say something earlier. What's up? I couldn't bring myself to spill the beans and ended up playing it off like it was no big deal. A year flew by since we moved in with my in-laws, and Sally's relentless torment didn't let up. My spirit was scraping bottom, but I held on for the sake of my dear husband. Recently, Sally's tongue-leashings grew over the top, and she began piling on absurd demands.
I've got some friends coming over. Go fetch some cakes from the department store in 10 minutes. Get rid of the weeds in the garden while I'm out. Make sure you season the dinner like I do. I'll claim I cooked it.
The list just went on and on. Each time I fell short of her escalating demands, I was met with a fresh barrage of abuse. I was teetering on the edge. One day, as I was tidying up the garden following her orders, Sally barked from the inside the house.
Hey!
I found her smirking as I approached.
You know we're hosting a family gathering next week, right?
What do you mean by...
That means you need to clean this house spick and span. If I spot even a speck of dust, you're in trouble.
Hold on, even a speck of dust? That's just not possible.
Excuse me? How dare you answer back, you incompetent daughter-in-law? If you refuse, you'll be saying goodbye to Ken.
It hit me then. I turned into nothing more than Sally's pawn. I was beat, physically and mentally, but I couldn't turn my back on this life, not when it meant leaving my beloved husband. But even I had my breaking point. Should I walk out on my husband to escape her, or endure and carry on like this? Neither option sat well with me. I didn't want to lose what mattered most. Once I was sure of my feelings, a wave of pent-up anger towards Sally surged within me. I didn't give a damn about the consequences anymore. I was done dancing to her tune. I locked eyes with Sally and made my stand. Fine, I'll get this house cleaned up. Oh, isn't that something? I wish you showed this much enthusiasm all the time. This time, I'll make sure not to let you down. Well, I'll be expecting good results, but don't forget, failure won't be forgiven. With that, she strutted out, leaving me behind. Recently, she's been all dolled up and stepping out quite often. She dumps all the chores on me and heads out. It used to irk me, but now I found it almost comforting. I decided to let Ken in on the truth, hoping to catch him on his lunch break. When I opened up about the abuse, he stammered back. Is that for real? As I nodded, he let me in on a bombshell. Actually, my dad spilled the beans yesterday. Apparently, my mom is having an affair. What? Your mom is cheating? Dad's been frequenting a detective agency instead of hitting the golf course. He's gathering proof of her affair. They're even mulling over a divorce. What? I can't believe it's come to this. I was at a loss about how to break this to you, but I guess it worked itself out. Mom mentioned she'd be late today, so let's sit down with Dad later. Just the three of us. Who would have thought Sally was messing around on the side? But this could be a game changer in my favor. The odds of my plan succeeding just shot up. I had a big-time plan cooking, and I absolutely needed the aid of my father-in-law Scott and my husband. As Ken and Scott walked through the door, I spilled all the beans about Sally's mean streak. Scott was fired up, hollering, "That's unforgivable!" But I cooled him down and explained my game plan. Scott, I want to give Sally a taste of her own medicine. You in? Absolutely, but what's the big idea? As I spilled my plan, Scott and Ken were all ears, trading looks to check each other's take. But they were quick to give the thumbs up, looking back at me. Heather, it's a tall order, but count us in. We're backing your plan all the way. Yeah, you can count me in too. Scott, Ken, you guys are the best. I immediately picked up my phone and hit up my dad back home. What's up? I rapidly filled my dad in on my plan. Dad, here's the plan. I need a hand. I see where you're going with this. No problem. I'll round up the troops. We have to handle some red tape first. Can we shoot for a week from now? Sure thing. Got it. I'll gear up my end till then. Thanks, Dad. With my dad on board, I dove into the prep work the very next day. Alongside Scott and Ken, being super careful not to tip off Sally, we got all our ducks in a row. Fast forward to a week later. On this fine Sunday, Scott and Ken were kicking back at home. Sally was grinning ear to ear, playing the doting mother-in-law perfectly. Heather, what's for lunch today? Since the guys are here, why don't we order some grub? I've got company dropping by soon. Company? Right on schedule, the doorbell chimed. I swung the door open, and there stood my dad. Heather, long time no see. Thanks for coming, Dad. I hate to put you through all this. What are you talking about? You're my kid. It's no sweat. Thanks. Can we get started? Sure thing, but first, get the stuff out. On it. I shot a look to my husband and Scott, and we began hauling our packed gear outside. Having separate rooms in my in-laws' house was a real stroke of luck. We managed to make the moving prep happen without Sally being any the wiser. Seeing us in action, Sally quickly piped up. Hold up! What the heck are you guys up to? Sorry, Sally. Could you step outside? Safety first. What's this about safety? Give it to me straight. No need for a play-by-play. It'll be clear as day once you see from the outside. What on earth are you plotting? As we carted out the last piece of luggage, Sally busted out of the house. A wrecking crane had just rolled up, all set to get down to business. Yep, the favor I asked from my dad was to bulldoze my in-laws' house. We're a construction family, and my old man is still in the game.
Wait, what's all this?
As Sally let out her disbelief, the crane got down to business. Watching the scene, she went white as a sheet.
Oh, our house! This is your doing, Heather! You think you can pull this off?
As she raged at me, yanking at my collar, I just gave her a sweet smile. My doing? That's mean. Just a heads up, your hubby and your son are on board with this.
Wait, what? There's no way! They're part of this?
Believe it or not, Scott's even got divorce papers ready.
Say what?
Well, you've been playing the field, haven't you? Sweat was trickling down Sally's forehead as she stumbled backward, her mouth hanging open. The knockout punch came from Scott himself.
You've been living high on the hog with my cash and supporting another guy. On top of that, you've been giving Heather hell. When will you hit rock bottom? That's not it, honey. I didn't mean... We've gathered all the evidence we need. Divorce is in the cards. I'll reclaim all the dough you've blown, including damages for me and Heather. If you won't agree to the divorce, I'm ready to take this to court. Brace yourself. No!
Sally's piercing scream echoed against the rumble of the machinery. No one was there to comfort her. Eventually, my in-laws split up. The three of us relocated to a monthly rental that we had set up in advance. With nowhere to live and no money to her name, Sally apparently moved in with her brother and his wife. But she's never been on good terms with them, so they're treating her like a maid. While working a part-time gig to scrape by and paying us damages, she's at the mercy of her sister-in-law's bullying. Karma's a beast, isn't it? She could use a bit of self-reflection. Meanwhile, after moving out of the monthly rental, we settled into a different apartment. I found a part-time job at a local bakery, and I'm living the dream without any stress. Scott's planning to stick with us. If I hadn't come clean to my husband back then, if Scott hadn't stood by me, things might not have panned out so well. One thing I know for sure, I didn't make a wrong call. From here on out, I'm looking forward to peaceful days with Ken and Scott.